to me, I'm one of the co-founders of Morta, as you said. I'm actually, I'll just go through a bit my background, and then I'll talk a bit about Morta. I worked with one of the largest contractors in the Middle East for the first few years of my career. I'm actually a civil engineer by background, and I spent a lot of time on site implementing systems. And while I was doing that, we were using data for project management, for material management, for cost control, for progress monitoring, and all of these types of things that you'd have in a contractor. And to be honest, at some point I was disillusioned by working in construction as a whole. So I wasn't sure that construction was actually for me. So I quit my job and I went and did a master's in Cambridge in engineering for sustainable development. And that was back in 2015. So like sustainable development wasn't a big topic, I would say, then. And the really interesting thing was a lot of the focus was on public policy and management and the role that that would have. And what I started thinking about a lot from then was data was going to have a massive role to play in sustainable development and things like the circular economy. I wrote my dissertation on that. And I became more and more convinced that the data work that I was doing in contracting was actually important, because I didn't think it was. And I actually went back to my job after the master's because I was like, the data stuff was important. So I became convinced that data is going to be at the heart of sustainable development. And what was really unique about the company that I was working with was I think we had a very deep appreciation of data. It was one of the largest contractors in the Middle East. We worked on mega projects like airports and oil and gas projects and high-rise buildings and so on and so forth. And we had built a lot of our in-house software applications. And it was all about how do we use data to drive project controls and to actually control for better outcomes and project delivery. And I felt we had the chief information officer there had a very unique vision in terms of how these things should happen and the role that BIM has to play within data-driven project controls. So I wanted to go back to the company, and I went back there, spent 2 to 3 years there after my master's on setting best practices for the use of data for project delivery. And towards the end of my time there, I was involved in the innovation and R&D arm of the company and setting that up. I saw all kinds of technologies, 3D printing, AI, digital twins, robotics, all super exciting stuff. But to me, it didn't feel like anyone was focusing on solving the basic problems that people on projects face day to day, and just making that smoother and making the processes smoother. So I decided to quit my job at the time and found Morta. And really, the goal is fixing the basics. All of these processes we currently manage in Excel that are disconnected from each other and that don't have solutions. I felt like there needs to be a better platform to do that. And that was really the initial focus of Morta. So just wanted to fix the basics really before we talk about AI and robots and all of these fancy technologies.
I like this. I like this a lot. I like the grounding because you're right. Like in the last years, we have had so much hype around so many things that have come and not really gone, but they are still around. But yeah, we are still just in the hype stage of many of these technologies, and it's like I think you're right about this. We are very often overlooking the basic things, and we just look over shiny objects instead of focusing and trying to actually fix the small and simple stuff, do it better. The things that actually we repeat every day, many times, right? So I like that a lot. What can you tell me about the company? How big it is? How many employees it has? Like, do you have any investors or what you can share, of course. If you have any confidential data, keep it. It's fine. I'm fine with it.
No. So we started 6 years ago. We're an 8 people team. We're lucky in that even though we're an 8 people team, we're working with 50 of the largest organizations in the UK and in the world. Everything that ranges from companies like or organizations like the Ministry of Justice to Kier to BIMvoice to Sphere Entertainment, and we're on a very wide range of projects. When it comes to investors, just because you actually asked that, we initially were founded out of an incubator called Entrepreneur First, so we had some form of investment. But we're a company that decided not to go down the venture capital route.
Okay.
And the main reason for that was we felt that venture capital in many ways will force you to focus on the short term over the long term. And we thought that that won't necessarily help us achieve our vision for the company. So we decided to bootstrap our way through, make revenue of companies, learn how to make a business that makes money, and make sure that our interests and our incentives are completely aligned with our customer success. Morta only grows if our customers succeed at solving these problems, and we grow with it. And I think that's a very important point, because people sometimes think that VC is always a good thing. But VC then means that my actual interest becomes my shareholder, not my customer. Whereas my interest, what I think about every day is Kier happy or is it not happy? Is BIMvoice happy? Is the Ministry of Justice happy? And if they're happy, we're happy. It's a very simple equation. And yeah, we think that ultimately that helps make sure that we're always on track to deliver the long-term value and what we're actually after as a company, rather than focusing on short-term targets and so on and so forth.
Okay, I like this a lot. Again, I did not knew this. I did not know these things beforehand, like how it started, why it started, the reasoning behind, and why you like this story. And this tells me a lot about yourself and your personality, and I like that a lot. I have to say this.
Oh, thanks.
Because you think about your mission first. Like you said, like venture capital will push you. Will push you. You need to deliver results, quick results, and now you have your own the full control, right? You can choose direction you want to go. It's up to you. Of course, you don't.
100%.
It's going slower. Of course, it's going slower, but at the same time, you live by it, right? If it's your passion, then that's the right way
Look,
to
but
do
it
it.
also defines on what you mean by going slower. I think, I mean, I'm biased, but I think a lot of companies will have the image of they're growing because they brought some money and they hired 30 people, which they don't really need, to be honest. And the 30 people are mostly not really adding that much value to the company. So, but it would feel good for me to say, I have a
A big
team with
team.
40 people. I'll give the image of I've made it, but in reality, I think a lot of these people would not necessarily be needed, and it's actually just a distraction from the genuine growth, I would say, of the company. And for me, when I think of like growing, it's how many clients am I working on? How many projects am I working on? The other like we're being rolled out on the MOJ estate with some of the biggest tier ones and main contractors. We're working on some of the largest projects in Saudi Arabia. The size of our team doesn't say anything about the billions that are being managed on the platform. But I think the other thing, to be honest, that is very important and is often missed, and we're thinking more and more about this. Morta is in the business of selling productivity. Like we sell being productive. If I need to hire an army of people to manage Morta and the deployment of Morta, then chances are I'm not very efficient. So me being actually small, and in many ways we want to double down and more on that. We have some of our clients are 1 or 2 people consultants that are trying to build digital services to service many asset owners.
Mhm.
If we can't do this ourselves, our clients will never be able to do it. And again, it's an important print of us. A software company being big is not necessary in terms of people, is not necessarily a good thing, because then that means they're not actually that productive themselves
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
efficient themselves. And ultimately, most of us are in the world of selling efficiency. So we should practice it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's actually very wise and very nice to put the things this way. And by the way, maybe these people watching will think that I'm doing so many compliments to you. Guys, it's important to understand that this is not a paid interview. This is just a free chat that we have, and I'm really genuinely impressed by all these things. So it's important to have that behind your before you start judging me or judging our chat. Right.
No,
Okay. Let
thanks.
me ask you another thing. You mentioned that you are the co-founder. Who is the other co-founder, or who are the other co-founders?
Yeah, I have another co-founder. His name is Matthew Morrison. I came from a construction background. He came from a tech background. So we have like both of these skill sets in the company and the way that we think. So he
Mhm.
worked in a mix of finance and technology, and we actually met at an incubator where we started bonding over blockchain, of all things, and we've been building the company together since. He usually likes sitting in the background, but he's the
Mhm.
one who makes all of the magic happens when it comes to the platform itself and like the underlying platform. But I'm the one who has worked in construction and
Mhm.
deals with the customers in many ways.
Okay, interesting. You said also you mentioned many big names, and like let's clarify something. Is this product only for large companies or large projects, or is this like something that any kind of company could leverage?
Okay, that's a great question. Um, there are so many levels to it. But what I want to do is just before answering that, I don't feel like I've explained what we do as a company. So I'm just going to briefly describe what we do, because that will then help me answer that question.
Yeah, sure.
So right now in construction projects, we have a lot of information in spreadsheets and Word documents, regardless of whether I'm tracking costs or whether I'm tracking carbon or whether I'm tracking my BIM deliverables and my information, or I'm tracking resources. Pretty much always that's happening on an Excel-based tracker where someone goes into a system, they pull data from it, manually re-enter it into that tracker, and then at best upload it into a Power BI dashboard. And equally, like the tracking itself happens in spreadsheets, the detailed planning happens in the spreadsheet. So a very good example of a detailed plan would be an information delivery plan. What are the drawings and the models that I'm going to be producing for this project? Now, what happens, as you'll know, is if I'm making these detailed plans, I need every one of my subcontractors to make their own detailed plan. And if I'm the main contractor, I need to bring all of these together. And then I need to track against all of these plans. Obviously, if it's a big company and it's a big project with more complexity, there are more spreadsheets. And the more spreadsheets there are, the more difficult it is to manage. So where Morta comes in is we provide a connected information hub that has a lot of the properties of a database, but the familiarity of a spreadsheet. And we make it very easy for teams and for information and data to come together from different places. So inherently, we're most valuable the more complexity there is and the more teams there are. Having said that, though, that doesn't mean that we're just being used. I would say that's where we're most valuable. But within any construction project, even like on average, when you look at where Morta is being deployed, it's being deployed on projects of a value of £20 million to billions. But like a school, for example, would be 20 million. We have many companies that are delivering schools, for example, on top of Morta, because there will at least be 10 to 15, 20 supply chain members that are involved in the delivery of this project. So a lot of our initial focus was on larger projects with more complex supply chains. Having said that, though, and that could be owners, that could be general contractors, that could be multidisciplinary design teams, that could also be specialist consultants that are working for one of these players and managing a process on their behalf. But increasingly too, we're also working with the specialists because they need to cross-check a lot of data. They will have the plan on Excel. They want to check what's in Viewpoint, and Morta helps automate that process for them. So we're being used by, I would say, a range of players, both very large and sometimes small. But we become more and more useful the more complexity there is and the more files you would have had to manage, because we now take it back to one table that has many views and people take the information out of it that's relevant for them.
Interesting. This is interesting. We're going to dive deeper into this, and I'll challenge you really hard soon. But before that, let's do one thing. And that I will not only challenge you, I will actually provide you with some golden nuggets from a user perspective. Before we go to that, tell me one thing. How did you come up with this name? Mo coming from you and RT from your co-founder? No.
Well, someone has asked me, like I do get asked. I'm gonna say it. Yeah, I'm not into myself enough to want my name to be the. But the key thing is mortar. We all know mortar binds bricks together. We think data and information can bind construction and supply chains together. So, and if you think about it, you have a lot of like bricks, which are the solutions that get implemented.
Yeah.
And then you need something that will bring them together and glue them together. And that's mortar. And usually, so Morta is mortar without the R. And that's really why we call ourselves Morta. We just want to bind and bring information together and connect these different pieces of the puzzle or bricks with each other for the industry.
Okay, but why did you remove the R at the end?
Because we thought that was cool. There's an ongoing debate over, like, every now and then we wonder whether we should add the R's, because people don't miss out on the fact that that's why we actually called it Morta, and we're thinking about how to make that clearer. And actually, there's a funny story on that. After we named it Morta and we found the domain, so it was also a domain issue. We didn't find the domain for Mortar. We Googled it later, and in Italian, Morta means death. So around a month later, we were at a conference, and we mentioned to someone Italian that our name is Morta, and he was like, "Have you guys not like checked out what that means?" So at some point, we checked it out, and if you Google Morta, you'll find images of death. But now we rank higher on Google than death. So
that's funny, man. But you know something? I'm originally from Romania. In Romanian, you say like mort without the A at the end means also dead. So that's why, like, every time when I'm thinking about this, it comes something spooky in my mind.
Negative.
Something, yeah, not negative, but something scary, something dark, right? So like I even forgot about the Italian, but actually, yeah, Morta means that he's dead, like she is dead or something like that. So that's
now we say we want to kill spreadsheets. So
yeah. So now you have the, but even in English, doesn't mort means something spooky or something?
Basically in Latin, like if you go back to like Latin, like it's spooky, and like again, there may be an argument to the name itself is questionable. But yeah, we are also at like now there is increasing brand recognition like for the names. It's like
Yeah.
you change it, it's a bit of a funny joke. Like, do you do it? Do you
Yeah,
not
yeah,
do
yeah,
it?
yeah. Yeah, it might not
Um,
worth the pain. Like it's interesting. Yeah, yeah.
but
But
we'll see. It depends on the good test so far is we've gotten into markets where more like it's a negative word and it hasn't stopped us. I think if we were a consumer facing brand, it would definitely be an issue.
be a problem. Yeah, yeah.
But in B2B, it's a bit less of a problem. But yeah, it's
Also
a big
our
question.
niche. It's also in our niche. It's a very like people people when they search, they don't search never eventually necessarily after Morta's name, but they search about information management platform or something like that, right? So
Exactly.
as long
Yeah.
as you do your SEO better, good, then it should be fine. But it was just something that I really wanted because I didn't to find out more because I did not hear anything about this before.
It's a good question.
Yeah, thanks. Um, Before I told you like we dive into more interesting things, real challenges.
I
Let me
like,
ask
to
you
be
some.
honest, just on your point, and I think we should do a better job as a company at telling the story because I
Mm,
think one of the things that personally bugs me and construction tech, just broadly speaking,
mhm,
I'm someone who thinks technology is good, just to be clear. And anyone who's coming to drive technology and increase adoption, I think that's a good thing
mhm,
because we all should work towards moving the industry forward. But what does bug me sometimes is there are people who are just doing it opportunistically. I think I do also see sometimes that people are like, construction is backward and it's not digitized. We're gonna come and save it. And I think there are some very valid reasons for why construction. I'm someone who thinks that construction hasn't had the tools that it's needed to have and its construction is much more complex than it looks. You're talking about arguably the most complex industry on earth. There are very valid reasons why you can't just have a full standardized thing that everyone just implements. And I think there are very subtle things that happen that on the outside aren't obvious. So I think it's important for people to have, like for us as a company, to tell the story more because, like, the reason why we architected Morta in a certain way, I was lucky to work in a company where we focus on data, but also we worked across 50 geographies and also we worked across many different types of projects. So I understand that the way I manage an oil and gas project is going to be subtly different to the way I manage a high rise residential project and a metro project and a building and but these things, even if you look at some of the biggest tech vendors, they built for contractors or for buildings, and when they come to get into infrastructure they struggle because they wouldn't have had that appreciation of these are not the same, they are very different types of projects and these things are important. So I think like these like I do like digging into the background sometimes because it's not just someone, it's not just obviously we want to be a big company and all of that, but we do have an appreciation of sustainable development will need data, and these are some of the core things of why we actually did what we did, and there are some very subtle decisions in our product that wouldn't be apparent on the get-go, but they're rooted by that deeper mission of we want to connect data together and connect information together, and we want to be able to do that to this across asset types, not just pick a very specific type of assets and do it there for the industry to really move forward in that direction. And if that happens, that enables all of the other point solutions and AI and robotics and all of these fancy emerging technologies that people are talking about. But we need to get connected, good quality data at its core for companies that will operate across asset types. You can't tell someone like here, I'll work for you in buildings, but I won't work for you in this other asset type. That's why Excel hasn't gone away because Excel works across all of these different types of projects and
mhm.
typologies and geographies. And um, so I actually like for a change, to be honest, talking about the background rather than just purely the specific product and
Mhm.
exactly
Yeah,
what we're doing today.
I think it's important. on a personal level, like you get an identity, right? This is the brand identity. Like, of course, it's important. It doesn't feel too shallow, right? It's important to add some depth to this. Who is the most popular, the most casual, most of the time? What is the kind of people who are using this platform? Because I
Yeah.
assume it's not the worker on site. Maybe there are few of them as well, but uh, who usually, if I am in a company that I want to try this product, who is usually the kind of people doing that?
Yeah. The challenge with being a company that's trying to take on spreadsheets and Word documents is there are a lot of potential people that, that can use it within construction. So just for perspective, all kinds of teams are using it. I think there are two important things. First, we are completely focused on the office. We do not deal with any field-related workflows directly ourselves. We interface with field solutions, but we are not a field-level application. We're an office-based application. So that's first. The second thing is we usually start with information or design management teams within either main contractors or multidisciplinary design firms. I would say those are our most popular two. We also work with a few asset owners, but really where we're being used on a general basis, you'll have an information or a BIM manager, maybe sometimes a design manager that will be working with one of either a multidisciplinary design firm or a general contractor. They'll take Morta and they'll start implementing it for processes like information delivery planning. That's our most popular initial use case.
Okay.
They use the platform for that. And then once they've started using it for that, they start going, I can also actually track my costs on this too. And we spread to other teams. But it starts with information and design managers most of the time.
Okay, I see. So it's not actually the BIM execution plan, which is the most popular one.
No,
It's the information delivery plan, meaning
yeah,
like make it very simple for everyone, like a list with documents that will be delivered on the project or during the
100%.
project, right?
Yeah,
That's what we talk about. And
yes.
okay, then we might have discovered why I failed at my attempt to try to use this tool. This is what I wanted to go. I tried Morta, to be honest. I tried,
Mhm.
but I tried with a BIM execution plan, and unfortunately, I hope I'm allowed to say this, but yeah, it's not anything sensitive. Just that our BIM execution plan um, is not being used to a very large degree extent by many stakeholders. So it's mostly me who use it, and yeah, there is a challenge with that. Like if you don't collaborate with many other people, and it's also that we get the information delivered on a specific platform, and we don't have any flexibility with that, right? So we get that information there, I convey it further, and it's me who use it mostly. So it's not the best case, right? Because if you have some actors that you can actually collaborate towards, then maybe it makes sense. So I tried, but I did not understand the value it can provide because I did not get to use it to the level that I think I intended to, right? Again,
Yeah,
I'm in a project that started a few years ago and it will be finished in a few years, in 2028. It's a big,
yeah.
large project, right? And here, like usually, yeah, you get the tools. It is difficult to implement tools if you are not um, like if you don't have control over everything. We don't have control over everything, right? So I think if you are a general contractor, or if I were a general contractor in a project where we had control over everything, how the deliveries should be and so on, then could have been different, right? And I don't know, I still
Can,
could be wrong again.
let me actually just comment on some of
Yeah.
what you said. Um, so The way to think about it, I guess, is there's a lot of information in point solutions and different databases.
Mhm.
There's then information in spreadsheets and in Word documents. We as Morta are taking on both spreadsheets and Word documents, and I can show you an example in a second. Some people are using it for the BIM execution plan, okay? So it's not that they're not using it for the BIM execution plan,
Yeah,
it can be used. But you said a very important sentence there, which is you couldn't see the value.
exactly.
And that's the important sentence, because if I'm just doing a BIM execution plan on Morta, okay, it's nice, it's on a web page, for example, but like, it's not too much better than doing it on Word.
You
Or
hit
it's not,
the nail in the
or
head.
it's not,
Exactly.
it's not clear. And we had to learn this along the way. Now, the reason for that is it's mainly just you. Maybe there are even sometimes there may be two more people inputting into it. You can open cloud-based Word and you can input data there. Like, no.
Exactly.
um, um, our goal with that was always there are tables within the BIM execution plan.
Mhm.
Ideally would be structured data sets so you can reuse them later, or you can reuse the data in the BIM execution plan in other execution plans.
Mhm.
So if you have project execution plan, design execution plan, quality execution plan, BIM execution plan, sustainability execution plan, there's a lot of data that's common between these. And if you're doing all of these on the platform, I would say that's more useful, because then you're sharing the milestones and the stakeholders and all of these things between the documents. But if you're looking at one BIM document or even multiple BIM documents, that's not where the magic, like that's not where the big power is. Now let's take the information delivery plan, which you'd also be managing, or if it's not you, there will be a design manager who's managing it. The responsibilities change company to
Mhm.
company, but as you said, there is a list of documents that has to be created by the different supply chain members. And then someone has to track every single day, or at the very least every single week, which of these documents have been delivered to me or not. The big problem there is I have Excel, and within Excel, I'm gonna send an Excel file for every supply chain member. They'll fill in their list of documents. Someone then has to manually aggregate all of these into a master list of all of the files expected. This itself is a very painful process. But
Mhm.
then you add to that, someone then has to open either Viewpoint or Aconex or ACC or ProjectWise or SharePoint or a site. The list goes on. And they have to check which of these files did I receive. And probably multiple. In many cases, the main contractor will use something and the client will use something else. And this needs to happen like really frequently. And it's a completely manual process. So where Morta comes in there is we eliminate the spreadsheet. We take the data, it's in one big table. Each supply chain member has access to a subset of the tables that's relevant to them. They fill in their data. Morta links via API to Viewpoint or to ACC or to any of these systems. And we automatically cross-check these two things with each other.
Mhm.
And sometimes we may link the IDP to the drop-down list in the IDP, because I'm going to have a column which says company name, for example. That will come from the stakeholders table in the BIM execution plan. But it's about connecting the data, not about the document itself. And we ourselves only took a bit. So when you tried it out, I think it was a year and a half, 2 years ago. I remember you've opened it up at different points, but we ourselves now, when someone comes and tells us, do you want to use that? I'm like, you can use it for the BIM execution plan. You'll get it for the BIM execution plan. It's there. But the real value is in bringing data together. And that's why we focus our messaging a lot on the trackers, increasingly, not on the documents. So we say tracking on Morta, because that's the difficult job. That's controlling the project. That's making sure that the project will be delivered on time and on budget. That's where having many different files is not working, and many different data sets that don't connect to each other and are inconsistent and aren't aligned with each other. That's really the big problem. And then the documents, you can embed the tables within the documents and you can use them there. And we've become clearer on ourselves, like I would say, on that. And even when I talk about the smart things that happen in the documents, like an exchange information requirements document, the text is static, but again, it comes down to the big table that has the list of the requirements and being able to filter on who's responsible for that requirement. When am I responsible? So it's all about the big wins in the platform are not the documents, it's the tables.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I got a question. I got lost a bit right now. I was reading it. I'll ask you soon about that. But this is very important what you just told me right now, because it's the first time I'm hearing this. So I was trying to use the tool for something that it was not like, it does not really make a lot of sense, or it was not the best use case anyway, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Again, it's something we're actively getting better at. That's why also sometimes I'll see some systems, they're focusing on taking the BIM execution plan online. I don't, my experience, and like it goes back to there was logic for why we started with the BIM execution plan and the EIR, and we talked about these things a lot, and I can explain that. But it's not the big value add of the platform. The value add of the platform is, and it goes back to the name and everything I talked about at the beginning, we're a company that wants to enable people to use data better. And our goal is to help get as much structured data that's high quality and is connected to each other as possible. And the IDP, the information delivery planning or drawing trackers or model trackers, are much better examples of that than something like a BIM execution plan, because I need to connect it to P6, I need to connect it to the CDE, I need to connect it to a work package register. And we're enabling all of these connections via Morta. And now anyone who's new to Morta, we're directly going, look, you can use it for a BIM execution plan, and that's almost a bonus. But really, what will save you time and what will add value is tracking better on Morta.
Yeah, I agree. Now I start to understand better, and it makes sense. And makes sense. It completely explains my feeling. And this is, thank you for explaining this to me, because I was thinking like I got a good idea about, like, a good impression about the product, but when I tried it, I was not like, okay, I felt like, what's happening now? Like, it's only me using this, right? So what's the point? There is no point, right? So yeah. Um, that's a very important. You should definitely make this clearer if you are not doing it already in the messaging that the platform is broadcasting, and actually make this very clear, like what are the most important things that people are saving most time with. And exactly like you said, like that the value it's in there. You'll save a lot of time and money consequentially just by using it for that, right? So this is important.
In relation to this, I'd love maybe if I took 2 minutes just to visualize some of what I've said at some point. But there's even a more basic use case than the information delivery plan, which we learned about recently. Auditing CDE data. That's step one.
Wow. Okay.
So I have data in Viewpoint or in ACC, and I need to check, is the quality of the metadata within these, is it good? Did it follow my list of originators? Did it not? And right now, most people will do that on a spreadsheet. Again, it's a very manual process. So what we're doing with Morta is someone can very easily sync the data from Viewpoint and audit that data and just check. And then step 2 is cross-checking that data set against the information delivery plan. But step 1 is just checking the quality of the data in the CDE. Is the metadata within the CDE, did it follow the naming convention?
You
if it
can do
doesn't
that.
have the
That's
yeah,
pretty cool, actually. That's important one. You brought up something important.
yeah. We've
Sorry
like
for.
with the, no worries. Like these conversations are also good for me. So obviously here I'm doing it live. So, but the core, like the core idea is we want to make data more accessible and we want to increase the quality of data. And we're doing that for CDEs, and then we connect that to the IDP and so on and so forth. If I can, I'll visualize some of this for 2 minutes
Definitely,
now.
definitely. Just before that, let's cover one question, because what
Sure.
you say, this is very interesting. I don't know how much you heard about and how much you are into and planning to integrate with IDS, information delivery specification, because
Yeah,
this could be definitely a good case. Like you see that data, but you have also an integrated IDS that checks the data that you get, right? Because
yeah.
Nick Nisbet is asking this. I'm not sure if he refers to Morta specifically or in general, but since we talk about Morta, I hope he is referring to Morta. Can IDS or ISO 12911 structure information requirements replace the BEP? In Morta, I would think he doesn't say Morta, but I'm just saying Morta.
I think that's an output, and I'll explain what I mean by that now. Ultimately, I need to have a document called an EIR, and I need a human being to be able to read that. And I'm going to have a schedule of requirements within that. I then need to send that to Celibri. Depends on what type of requirements, especially the alphanumeric requirements. I then need to send that to Celibri. IDS could be a great vehicle in order to do that. So there are sections within, and this is my problem. Sometimes the language is very confusing. Do you, Nick and I can have, hi Nick, we can have a whole conversation around this, but IDS is not there to replace EIRs. An EIR has far more than the schedule of requirements, but it is there to replace the schedule of requirements specifically. And these are, like this subtlety is very, very important. So there is a specific section within an EIR, which actually is the schedule of requirements, that you should be able to output into something like IDS so that I can then check it in Solibri, or I can then load like potentially like my objects within Revit off the back of that and like things like that. Yes, but the EIR also has other sections like who's going to be delivering and what, or the BIM execution plan, what software am I going to be using, and all of these types of things, which are relevant potentially for an IDS, but it's not, it's IDS is not all encompassing. It's just a very, 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 very specific section within any of these documents. It's the most important section, but it's a section within these documents. So as Morta, and maybe this is a good point to just explain slightly what I mean by some of this.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is the platform, and there, like you can see here, this just looks like documents on top of the platform. I'm going to start with the EIR just purely because Nick like asked about that. I have different sections within an EIR. I may have my milestones, for example, and you can see here there is text. But then I have a section around the milestones itself, and this is where we're starting to see the tables. I then have a section called my requirements, and my information requirements are split into 3 different key types of requirements. I have the documentation requirements. What documents do I require? Or the containers that I require is another way to look at it, depending on who you're speaking to, or what files I require. Then I have what data do I require, which is where I start going to something like IFT and what I require there. And then I may have my geometrical requirements, where I'm starting to go, this is what I'm going to have, these are the colors, this is the visualization for what this will look like, and so on and so forth. Now, what we as Morta are doing for some of our customers, it's not a core Morta feature, but it can be achieved. I can export this table into an IDS. I got a thumbs down from Zoom when I said that from you, by the way. You know how Zoom sometimes does it just put the thumbs down on its own. But you can take this table and you can actually export it into an IDS format that I can then ingest into something like Solibri.
That's why you got this. Look, I have this. I think that's why I was holding my head like this. You see? It's no thumb down. I was just scratching my face. Sorry.
No worries. But so the point being there, yes, for the structuring of the requirements themselves, especially the alphanumeric requirements, I'm less clear on whether it will be supportive of the documentation requirements, but the clear implementation everyone is talking about when it comes to IDS is this is the data that I expect for a specific entity. These are some rules that I'm expecting around this. I want to assure this within something like Solibri. Can I take the schedule and import it into Solibri? I can do that by exporting this into an IDS, and we facilitate that via a Power Automate flow. And I can share a video in relation to that that we're enabling for some of our clients. But then what needs to happen is I also have this table which has the documentation requirements. That needs to relate to something like my master information delivery plan. And what we're starting to look at, I'm just going to actually just stay in this hub, to be honest. What I can then do is I can go into here. I can see I have a section here for my task teams. Each of my task teams or my supply chain members can come in. They can fill in the data, that the deliverables that they have in response to each of these documentation requirements. And when they're filling in any of this data, it's being fed in from other tables that were filled in the other documents to ensure the quality of what's in the information delivery plan. And to ensure that it's high quality. So it's not a retroactive process. I get it back and then I check it. Anything that's being filled in here is being filled in based on effectively rules that have been predefined in these other documents. And then what I can do is I can link this back to my information requirements that I had in this other table. And most importantly, instead of having many different tables in Excel that I then need to aggregate, all of this information is being fed into one very big table, which has all of this information available for me. I can see it here. And then if I go into any of these, I can go to the right-hand side and I can see some columns that are grayed out because this is the data that I'm reading from something like Viewpoint or something like ACC. And I can then take all of this data. So I've cross-checked my data to the IDP. I can then take it and I can visualize it in charts, either on Morta itself, where I have visual charts. We're trying to do basic charts. We're not trying to replace Power BI. It's the things that someone would do very simply. But then also a lot of our clients will have a central dashboard where they will visualize all of this data. The last thing that I'll just quickly touch on is if I go in here and I make a new table, what we want to do is make it very easy for someone to pull data from Viewpoint, for example, into Morta. So I can click here on Viewpoint for projects. I can then select the enterprise that I have. I can then select the project that I have, and I can sync data. And it's this simple to retrieve the metadata of what's in Viewpoint versus that I can then use in many different ways. And you can see this sync has now been established. I'm pulling the metadata of everything that's been uploaded into Viewpoint. And this will refresh every hour or every 24 hours or every or manually, depending on the level of subscription. So it's all about making data accessible. We're doing the same thing for issues in Revisto. So here you can see Viewpoint for projects, ACC, A-Site, Procore, Aconex, Revisto issues, and so on and so forth are all examples of ones we're reading data from.
Yeah, that looks very, very neat and very nice. Looks much better. Looks like something that I was looking for when I tried it. I should have started with that. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, we live and learn every day, right? I love that.
Yeah, on all sides.
Yeah. All right, let's
Um,
ask everyone watching, if you have any other questions, please ask. Would you say that this is more like, this is not limited to general contractors, right? Like there are designer companies also using it, right? It's not mostly.
Yes, yes. So we're working with, I would say the biggest two are main contractors and multidisciplinary design firms. So we're working with the likes of Mott MacDonald, De Bureau Happold, Mace, like a lot of these types of companies that are involved in leading design teams as well.
Mhm.
So it spans the whole spectrum. But any Atkins, like any time that someone is um, managing a design process, it becomes relevant. But it depends on the responsibilities and where they sit
Mhm.
and who we work with.
I see. Cool. What plans do you have for the future, guys?
From our end, I'm going to show you this diagram actually. Um,
Yeah, do it.
the interesting thing that's happening with Morta, and there are many, I think there are two things. I'm going to show you actually two things given you asked the plans for the future question. Um, the first is this, which I try to verbally talk through, but
Oh,
sometimes it's
that's
easier
cool.
to show
Yeah,
this
I
diagram.
love doing the same as well. It's so much easier to understand when you have a picture accompanying.
Um, the Everyone starts with Morta for information management, and what you have here in the middle is what I see as some of the key trackers and teams in many ways responsible for controlling the delivery of any project. That could be requirements, that could be cost, carbon, time, that could be the scope of work, which is design, construction, or operation if I'm as an asset owner. There's then a mix of resources involved in delivering any of this work: supply chain, workforce, material, and assets. Obviously, if it's design, it's just supply chain and workforce. And then there are what I describe as interface areas: information management, risk management, and change management. And right now, most of these are managed on Excel, and they'll all need data from something like P6, from something like the ERP, from something like the document management system, maybe in the future from field management systems or from IoT devices or surveying technologies. And what we as Morta do is we start with information management that needs some of this data, but we want to make this data reusable in other contexts as well. So now some companies are starting to track costs on Morta. They're starting to track carbon on Morta, track carbon evidence or quality control and compliance evidence on Morta, where they will need some data that's in Aconex, for example. So the first side is we connect these trackers together and we enable the reuse of data in various contexts. The other side is what we describe as insights. So I want to visualize, I want to derive insight from my data. I could do that on something like Power BI. I could do that on something like Forge and a digital model. We have some clients that are connecting to things like ArcGIS to visualize site-related data. And then obviously AI is the new hot thing. So some people may want to pull that data into their own AI engines and Copilot and ChatGPT or any of these things and do their own thing. But we're also investing in our own capabilities effectively here. So any of the information that I have within Morta, I can come and I can ask, does Morta connect with Power BI? And I can ask Morta AI. And we're using, like we've deployed our own open source models because a lot of our clients are very, like data security is very, very important to them. So you can see here, I asked it a question. It gave me an answer. Yes, according to the context provided, Morta can connect with Power BI. This can be done via a Power BI connector or through integrating with the Power Platform. I then get a link to the document that has my answer. And in the same way, a company that has something like an EIR on Morta, someone can ask, what's the file naming convention on the project? They can start getting answers to that. So we're starting to make the information more accessible via things like AI. So I would say the two big things are, we're going in many ways, we're making three things. Information management is becoming very easy to deploy. So if someone like you is starting, they can get started within 30 minutes and like really benefiting from these. So the one-click integration was something you saw earlier. The second thing is for companies that are existing, they're going beyond information management and they're going into many other functions. We're starting to read data from Revit and things like that as well, and IFC and so on and so forth, and make that data reusable in various contexts. And the third is we're making information more accessible, either via things like chart views, which I showed quickly, or things like AI, for example.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any other questions. We are right on time, close to 4 p.m. sharp, my time zone. Like, of course, we could talk more about it, but I think we covered the essential things. I got a very good understanding, and I'm very grateful for that. Really appreciate you taking the time for this, and I really got some good feedback based on my previous mishaps or yeah,
No, I get
failed at
ultimately,
attempts.
ultimately your attempts, I think, and this is the key thing. It's we need to do, and we are doing, but we need to even do more of a better job at guiding our community at how to best use the platform for the right use cases. And it's been a journey on our side, and we're only getting better at that. So I also thank you, to be honest, for giving me even more feedback and things to think about. And um, you'll only see more developments as a result of that. So yeah, thanks for having me today.
Thank you very much, Mo, for joining. Good luck in the future with everything you do, and thank you very much, everyone, for taking the time to watch this. And we stay in touch.
Thank you. Hope you enjoy the football game later.
Wait 1 second because I'll stop the stream and the